Hi, I've been working as a bilingual speech language pathologist for the past 11 years in New York State. Most recently, I'm in my 5th year as a school-based speech language pathologist. I'm going to talk today about some of the challenges and successes of conducting equitable evaluations within the school system. I'll start by taking a look at the diverse suburban school district where I work and some of the student demographics. Let's start by looking at elementary school A. You'll see that the majority of students in this school identify as white and are economically advantaged. 9% of these students are classified with disabilities. Compare that to elementary school B, where about half of the student population identifies as Latinx and is economically disadvantaged. The classification rate in this school doubles to 18%. So we know that there's likely an over-identification of culturally and linguistically diverse students. So what are some of the things that I'm hearing in the schools? Can I just administer the CEL-5 and not report the test scores? No, because the bias exists in the standardized tests, not just in the scores that are reported. Why does the student even need a bilingual evaluation? He, she, or they doesn't even speak Spanish. There are key factors that need to be included for every evaluation, such as the influences of culture, language, socioeconomic status, parental education, and academic history, such as interrupted education. These factors cannot be ignored, even when a child is not fluent in a language other than English. I can't see the student. He, she, or they speaks a language other than English, and I can't use my regular screener or test. This type of statement is problematic. One, because there aren't enough bilingual speech language pathologists to do all the work for culturally and linguistically diverse students. And also because every evaluator needs to understand the various and unique experiences of a student. Also, this directly connects to the ASHA Code of Ethics, which states that clinicians have an ethical responsibility to not discriminate based on race, ethnicity, language, or dialect, among other factors, and to enhance and refine our professional competence and expertise. We must fill in the gaps after graduate school and stay current on the research and best practices. One of the best outcomes of the comments that I hear in the schools is that it's opened up dialogue with my colleagues. It's allowed me to fill in the gaps of misunderstanding. These conversations are a start because they begin to create awareness. One of the greatest challenges that I've faced is that psychologists who serve as leaders and chairpersons on the Committee on Special Education continue to rely primarily on test scores. We'll remember that federal special education law requires that all assessment materials be free of cultural and racial biases and distinguish a true disability. So which one of the standardized tests can do this? None of them can. So many psychologists rely on a tool called the Culture Language Interpretive Matrix. This tool was developed in 2013 to evaluate the extent to which developmental language proficiency and cultural learning opportunity affect the validity of standardized test scores for individual students. It was created to answer the question, are the students' observed learning problems due primarily to cultural or linguistic differences, or in fact, a true disorder? Sounds like an amazing tool. But where is the research to show the construct validity of this interpretive approach? There's none. No empirical studies have been published in peer-reviewed journals to validate the use of this tool. So what does the CLIM research say? Well, there's a growing body of research, including peer-reviewed articles and dissertations from 2013 to 2022 that raise the question about the validity of using the CLIM to make clinical decisions. Studies indicate that the CLIM does not accurately measure cultural and linguistic demand of standardized tests as intended, and indicates a low accuracy for distinguishing individual students. The research article from this year, 2022, shows the results that the CLIM makes individual decisions only at slightly higher than chance rates. When we look back to the peer-reviewed article from 2013, the evidence showed that it identified English language learners at chance levels. So it's about as accurate as flipping a coin. Additional CLIM research using a variety of cognitive measures all have found the same lack of validity. The empirical evidence suggests that the CLIM-based decisions may too often work against its intended purpose. So what does this mean? It means that English language learners may be incorrectly under or over identified with a disability when this tool is used. So why is the CLIM still being used? Even after sharing the research on the CLIM's low accuracy, some psychologists may continue to use the tool. While I was able to shift the thinking in my direct colleague, we still see its continued use. Well, some clinicians don't use valid tools. And not all clinicians know how to do a valid, culturally and linguistically responsive evaluation. This is as true in psychology as it is in speech-language pathology. This is a clear example of a practice that is not consistent with the current research. So, what can be done? Again, we look back to the ASHA Code of Ethics, and we find that it requires collaborative work, not just with members of one's own profession, but with other professionals as well, in order to deliver the highest quality of care. So we have to come together for the best interest of students. So what are some of the solutions? In my own district, we formed a district-wide interdisciplinary evaluation team. This includes myself as the bilingual speech-language pathologist and a bilingual school psychologist. We conduct all of the initial referrals to the Committee on Special Education. Our district has shown clear over-identification of students with cultural, linguistic, and socioeconomic differences. So one of the primary goals of the evaluation team is to create equity across the schools. So despite the differences we saw in individual schools based on student demographics, decisions won't be based just by a student's background, but based on using evidence-based evaluations or evidence-based practice, like process-based and dynamic assessment that reflect a student's learning and does not simply rely on standardized test scores, so that we can accurately distinguish between a difference and a true disorder in each student. Other things we use is obtaining background information on each student. So information that includes their academic records, teacher reports, observations, and parent interviews, so that we're collecting data from multiple sources and various environments. One of the most important pieces of the evaluation team has been building allies. We've gained administrative trust and support of our professional practices. And most importantly, I've built a strong professional relationship with my colleague, a school psychologist, demonstrating that these strong relationships are possible across disciplines. We have an excellent rapport and working relationship. We share resources and research. we learn from each other, and we discuss these concerns openly. So based on the success of the multidisciplinary evaluation team, how can we create district-wide solutions? By forming a culturally and linguistically appropriate disability evaluation task force. This will allow us to address systemic racism and implicit bias head-on within the district. For one, those that opt in and are interested in developing their clinical skills are more likely to be open-minded and already advocating for change. We'll review current district statistics and identify the key issues that need to be addressed. Just as on the evaluation team, the administrators are likely to be very motivated because more accurate evaluations reduce the disproportionate identification of English language learners and minority groups in special education. We'll train additional professionals as chairpersons for the Committee on Special Education. This will shift some of the power and allow a different perspective. We'll learn together as colleagues, sharing evidence-based practice and the current research. Share less bias and more valid assessment materials, and discuss the practical implementation of these tools. Very often when students are assessed, while they may not have a true disability, there may still be interfering factors on these students accessing their curriculum, and thus they'll need RTI support programs. We'll invite families to share culture, language, and values so that we can learn about all of our communities in the district. And lastly, in order to share the work of the task force, we'll provide in-service workshops so that everybody can be trained and learn from this work. It takes time for change to happen, but it does happen. In the past 5 years, I've seen positive changes and improvements as I push for equitable evaluations in the district. The evaluation team formed in my district is a multidisciplinary model for conducting appropriate evaluations for all students. This will be a continued catalyst for positive change in the future. Thank you.